The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Thanks for joining another episode of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times. And with us on this episode is a familiar face and a familiar voice going back to the Tim Graham radio show days. First introduced to this man through his work at Fabe Soul High at the Walden Galleria, which turned into a phenomenon and helped feed an NFL phenomenon of My Cause, My Cleats. And that is Polo Kerber, who is, let's just say Polo's gone down the road of in his professional career. And we're going to get caught up with him because he is now on what I think is a new frontier in sports marketing that deals a lot with the name, image, likeness developments that have been so big lately. Polo, thanks for joining us and for talking to us about a thing that's kind of new for everybody because we don't think about it much, but here you are at your business.
Thank you for having me, Tim, first of all, and Jonah. I think for me, it is new, and for, not just for a lot of the collegiate athletes, just, for us on the marketing side. I've had a few years now to, really gain a lot of knowledge and experience, but this is brand new. And, from the recruiting of the kids to the process of how everything works, it'll definitely be a little bit of a learning curve.
Polo Kerber has gone quite a ways since Fabe Soul High. The man just a couple of months ago had a press release sent out about him joining a company, which is pretty cool. Maybe I would aspire to have a press release about me someday that people would care enough about what I'm up to or my business. But you had a press release, Playmaker. You joined Playmaker as the head of talent and partnerships. And Playmaker is it's a program. Playmaker has a program within it for athletes to help them monetize their content, likeness, doing shows, brand deals, music, merchandise. What is your role as head of talent and partnerships there? What did you bring to Playmaker that they were excited about?
Right. So I think the main thing that I brought was athletes. Playmaker, before I came aboard, was really just a media company that really just followed current sports stories, almost similar to, SportsCenter, Bleacher Report, or, Barstool. So if you almost think of it like that, and then if they started representing athletes personally, that's really, what Playmaker did in bringing me on board. So I brought a lot of guys that, I have relationships with, and we signed them. And my pretty much day-to-day role is just to help everybody with everything off of the field or off of the court. So any kind of endorsement deals, branding opportunities, community efforts, like you said, content, media, merchandise, pretty much everything that an athlete does outside of contract negotiations, I do.
Polo, can you tell us a little bit about how you got from here to there? And I know some of your marketing efforts started in Buffalo with Buffalo athletes. You're a West New York native.
Right. 1,000% started really with, where Tim kind of met us at, with the store, and a little bit before that, before we had that store in the mall. That's really where a lot of the relationships came from. I think, it really got catapulted from LaShawn McCoy, when he was in Buffalo, and just really allowing us to do a lot of things at our store. We did a few autograph signings with him at the store. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 that he was really, satisfied with. And, he did a lot to introduce us to other teammates that he had on the Bills. He did a lot to introduce us to, other friends that he had around the NFL. And for us, it really started off of making cleats for the guys, and just having relationships with them from there, just forming friendships, and just in talking to the guys and, really learning what they want and, what they're looking for, what they're not getting. I saw, a way that I could kind of fit myself in there. And when you're doing cleats, it's great, but you're also asking the player for money for a service, compared to what I'm doing. It's, we're helping them to make money and expand, and everybody loves, making more money. So you get a little bit more that you can offer to the guys as long as you're doing your job correctly. So, that just opened up like a floodgate of things once we started bringing some opportunities to some guys, and, now it is where it is now.
And some of Polo's clients, a short version of his client list, or at least back in February when Playmaker sent out the press release that you were joining the team, Nate Robinson, Mario Chalmers, Carlos Boozer, J.C. Jackson, who I think is one of the more underrated defensive backs in the entire NFL, by the way. The guy had 9 interceptions last year and didn't make the Pro Bowl somehow. I don't know how that works, but and he was really good before that. He's on the verge of finally breaking out.
For sure.
But any other development?
You forgot Xavier Howard. He had 10 interceptions.
Yeah, that's right. Xavier Howard. Yeah, he's all right too, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing.
For sure.
And who else have you added, or what are the? Maybe, I don't want to get too far ahead because I know you're constantly negotiating. And especially with, like you say, the floodgates opening up with name, image, likeness stuff at the NCAA, maybe there's probably some things you can't talk about. A lot of things are in the works. I would hope anyway. But what can you tell us about what's happened since you joined Playmaker and maybe some of your bigger conquests?
Right. So I think since we joined it, it's really been able to expand my bandwidth, and the amount of people that we can really add on and service. Deebo Samuel from the 49ers is a really good young talent that we started working with after I came aboard. And we also have Desmond Bain from the Memphis Grizzlies, to kind of add some active NBA guys for us. A lot of the NBA guys that I had before were, guys that were just retired or in the Big Three. So Desmond Bain is really good, and he was second team all rookie this year and had a really good year. So that we've been excited about that. I think the main thing for us since I've come aboard is because we have such a large following, it really allows us to, just push some of those stories out there. We've done a lot with Xavier and, kind of stirring up the pot, if you will, of, is he the best cornerback in the NFL? And just really kind of like getting some of those stories out there. So it's coming from us and, not the players directly. And I think we've been doing a good job at that. And then, now with this NIL, there's a ton of kids. We've almost, tripled the amount of athletes that we work with in, 6 or 7 days. And there's a lot of contracts that are, out right now and going through the NCAA compliance. So that number will continue to grow. So for us, it's really just making sure that, we can manage everybody that we're bringing on and not really, giving ourselves too big of a bite that we can't handle.
Can you fill us in on your boxing experience? Because that to me is pretty fascinating. As Nate Robinson's representative, he obviously had the high profile fight against Jake Paul on the undercard of that was Tyson Roy Jones, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I guess maybe tell us about that experience if you could, and then maybe we'll get into a little bit more of this phenomenon of not only celebrity boxing, but exhibition boxing. That is people are into, and it's pretty good for the athlete because there's not nearly as much risk as an official fight. and it allows you to cut through a lot of the red tape of sanctioning bodies and things like that, the government, and you can put on a show as an exhibition and not as an official fight. And it seems like fans are still willing to buy into it. That doesn't have to be an official fight.
Right. So I think for us, I'll kind of give you a little bit of a backstory on how the fight even happened, and then, pretty much the process. So it goes into a celebrity softball game I did in Cleveland in 2019 with Jarvis Landry, and Jake Paul and Logan Paul are actually from Cleveland. So we had them play in that celebrity softball game, and really just formed a relationship with Jake and Logan there. They had their first boxing match later that year, early 2020, for the Super Bowl. And then I threw it out there to Nate, like, hey, there's a lot of celebrities that are boxing. It's an easy way to, make a good amount of money. It's definitely going to take a lot of work, because with Nate and Jake's fight, it was a professional fight. It wasn't an exhibition one. So with Nate, it was a little bit, more work that he had to do. And you got all these tests and, cutting weight and gaining weight and, all these things. So it was a pretty big process, but Nate was open to it. So we kind of went back and forth with Jake, and really what we wanted to do originally was, have Jake fight a few fights, have Nate fight a few fights, really set it up for, both of them to kind of win those first few fights and, give them opponents that weren't too hard, to beat. And then hopefully they win those matches. And then, you have this mega fight almost of Nate versus Jake. And then COVID, of course, kind of happened, and, it really canceled a lot of things that we were really able to do, and, slowed things down. We got approached by Jake's manager and said, hey, let's just do this right now. So it's Nate's first fight. It's Jake's, I think it was Jake's second pro fight. But the reason that we wanted to get on it was, as you said, it was Tyson versus Roy Jones. Like, you can't get, a bigger name as a co-main event than, Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., especially if it's your, first and second professional fight. So that was something that, we really wanted to be a part of. So, we made it happen. I think that, as far as the pay-per-view sales and, how many people actually tuned in, there were a ton. And it was definitely something I was excited to be a part of. Of course, the outcome wasn't what we wanted, but, when you, like you said, you get into those pro fights, it's tough, because that's something I've also never really experienced either, where, the fight weight was 188. And Jake Paul naturally walks around 200 pounds. But Nate usually walks around like 175. So Nate actually had to, bulk up a lot, and Jake had to cut down. So I think the day of the fight, Nate maybe was drunk a lot of water, got up to 181. And then Jake slimmed down and got down to 188 right on the line. But then the actual night of the fight, Nate went back down to 175-ish, and Jake was 200 pounds.
That's not how you want to do it.
Exactly.
You don't want to be drinking water to gain weight.
Right. So you got about a 25-pound difference, and, Jake's already, 2-3 inches longer. For us, though, it's easy to kind of look back on it in retrospect and say, okay, cool, we should have done this, we should have done that. But we were really going off of Jake's first boxing match that he had, and it wasn't good. Like, it didn't look impressive, but, he was also training for a long time. So, I think for Nate, even when he got in the ring, it was like, oh, this is Jake Paul. Like, I'm just going to kind of go out there and, I don't care what my coaches are saying. I don't care, what I was trained. I think it was just more of, going into the sparring and things like that he had. And just being excited, as well. So I think that, if we could kind of go back and, just slow the fight down, pace it out, it would be a lot better, because he did train a lot, and he fought a lot bigger people when he sparred. But, I think it was really just, a combination of being excited and not really knowing what to expect.
The last time we had Polo on the radio, he was nice enough to invite both of us to that charity softball game in Cleveland, and we didn't go for whatever reason. We could have got in on the ground floor of all this too.
Yeah, you definitely could have got in on the ground floor. And then he did it again. We didn't do it 2020 because of COVID, but I just did it again this year, and it was a great event. Baker Mayfield played in it. Odell Beckham played in it. Travis Kelce. So there's a lot of good names from Cleveland that were there.
We weren't invited to that one.
Well,
because we snubbed you the first time.
Yeah, it's because you snubbed me the first.
We were
time.
off the list.
I'll invite you now for 22.
Please.
Yes, sir.
Please. I want to make a point to mention, if people are listening to this and think, well, of course, this is some joke, some janky boxing promotion exhibit. They got one guy going from 200 to 188, one guy going from 175, and then there's a big weight difference. I mean, come on, that's not real boxing. I'm here to tell you that is real boxing. That happens all the time.
What is Floyd weigh? Floyd weighs a lot less than Logan Paul, right?
You watch a boxing match and especially if it's a really good broadcast like HBO used to have, they would have the in-ring weights, and it was staggering because these guys cut weight so much, they starve themselves, they dehydrate themselves, and then they have 24 hours to eat whatever they want. They can load up on the pasta and the carbs and whatever, have steaks and do whatever. They're guzzling water, and they come into the ring sometimes 30 pounds heavier than they weighed in. It doesn't seem humanly possible, but it is. And then you have these mismatches because some guys are a natural lightweight. Some guy is a middleweight coming down to lightweight. So anyway, I just want to make it a point to mention, if you're a casual, boxing fan and don't really follow it, and you're listening to what Polo described and thinking how outrageous that is. No, that's real. Real boxing does that. This wasn't because it was on the undercard of a Tyson Jones exhibition.
Right. Yeah. Even to see, the some of the people behind the scenes that are like, just Nate, go up in your room, just lock yourself in your room, take the scale up there, drink gallons and gallons of water, and don't pee until after the weigh-in, and that'll make the difference. So it's crazy to even see, the type of things that they do to get, just that weight the day before, and then the next day, it doesn't matter what you come in the ring at. And, so that was just an interesting process, and to really see, how everything behind the scenes of boxing does work.
What do you think the future of these boxing matches will be? We see, obviously, Floyd Mayweather had a successful bout himself that was an exhibition. It doesn't go against his undefeated record.
Right.
So his 50-0 will be preserved as long as he does exhibitions.
Right.
And he obviously made a good chunk of change in his most recent fight, and he's willing to do it again. He says, I'm not coming back. Right. Because why would he? Why would he risk his undefeated record and his legacy? And he can go out and just make this easy money. Fans are willing to pay for it. Anyways, and there are so many guys out there that Oscar De La Hoya now talking about fighting. He's got to be 50. I used to know how old he was, but he's got to be in maybe early 50s. He was a 96 Olympian, I think. Maybe even a 92 Olympian. I think he was a 92 Olympian. And he wants to fight again.
Right.
So where do you see this going?
I think it really just depends on the type of fights that are being put together. I think, Floyd Mayweather, he's going to sell regardless. And, I think the Mike Tysons versus the Roy Jones, those are going to sell. I think that you'll start, and you already have started to see almost a decline in, some of the ones that are more gimmicky. The YouTube versus TikTok boxing matches that they didn't really sell what they thought it would sell. I personally wasn't really a big fan of Lamar Odom versus Aaron Carter. And then, even when you look at like the Barstool, like the Jose Canseco boxing match that they did, like, stuff like that is more gimmicky. And I don't think, the traditional boxing fans will sell. I think that there's two things that really, sell a boxing pay-per-view. And I think, the first thing is that's the most important is, will a casual fan pay for this? If you have Mike Tyson versus, Roy Jones, any hardcore boxing fan is going to tune in and watch that.
Evander Holyfield, they've been flirting with that idea. People will watch that.
Exactly. But the hardcore fans, those are the ones that are going to tune into, ESPN and watch Top Rank on, a Friday night or those kind of things. So what really is going to sell the pay-per-view for you is, those casual fans, that like Nate Robinson versus Jake Paul. And then you really use Mike Tyson and Roy Jones to sell the hardcore fans. So I think you need like a good co-main and a good main event, that kind of bridges both fans together. I think if people continue to do that, then it'll be successful. And then I also think that, as you're creating the success for somebody like a Jake Paul, now you have people that are just buying the pay-per-view because they want to see him get knocked out and they're hoping to see him lose. And, if he keeps winning, then they're just going to sell more and more fights.
Why do you think Jake and Logan Paul have been able to catch on so much and capture the public attention? And I do wonder if there's some overlap with name, image, likeness, and how athletes can brand themselves as people and personality as much as athletic performers.
That's all it is, man. It's just branding. They do a really, really good job at branding. Jake's actually like a really cool guy. I saw when we were in the hotel, and there was nobody around. And he didn't even know I was there. There was a security guy for the elevator that was. He asked Jake for a picture, and it was just Jake and the security guy. And I was kind of like going to my room, and the guy took his picture out, and Jake's like, bro, what kind of phone is this? It's like, it's 2021, and the guy's like, I just don't have money for a better phone. And Jake gave him a couple $1,000s and said, here, go get yourself a phone. And, hopefully that helps you out a lot. And that was just something he genuinely did. There was no cameras around. There was nobody else saw it. It was, I don't think anybody else knows that story now outside of, me telling you guys. So he's genuinely a good person, but he does a great job at getting people to hate him. It's almost like, wrestling. And, I know Timmy, you're great wrestling fans. It's, if you can create yourself as a heel and make yourself hated, people just want to see you lose. And he does a great job at making himself a heel. And it's literally just a persona. When the cameras aren't on, he's not like that. And I think that's what makes it so interesting that he does and Logan does that not a lot of other people can do. Is they don't care what people think about them. A lot of people are so worried about, what people think and things like that. They don't care. Like if they're getting paid and people are tuning in, then, who cares what people think? And they do a really good job at that. And they also do a lot of like clickbaity things, which I think, even the got your hat when he stole Floyd Mayweather's hat at the weigh-in. I'm pretty sure there's millions of people that had no idea Floyd Mayweather was fighting Logan Paul. And now because of an incident like this, now people know. He does a really good job at getting under people's skin and just kind of creating those headlines.
It's a lot like sports talk radio and even podcasting in some ways. If you can make people feel some sort of an emotion about what you're doing and what you're saying, you got their attention hooked, whether they like you or not.
1,000%. Exactly.
Yeah. And so you have a good chunk of the people tuning in to see you get your ass beat.
Exactly.
And their money is worth just as much as the people who are tuning in because they love you.
Right.
And so what difference does it make? But I think and maybe Paul, you can speak to this as someone who's been around athletes. I'm around athletes to a certain extent. And yeah, I get to have discussions with them off the record, sometimes, even in their homes or in private, at a bar and in kind of, moments that are away from work. Right. But even to admit some of your motivations, sometimes it's difficult for an athlete to do. And I'm setting the question up this way. What do you think it takes in an athlete to be able to turn off that part of your brain? Because you do want people to care. It's a natural human instinct to want to be liked, I think. Right. But I think when it comes to being a pro wrestler, whether you're the Pauls, whether you're somebody like, Muhammad Ali used to do it because he learned how to be, his persona came from Gorgeous George a lot. So that was a pro wrestling thing, but actors, sports talk radio, like people who, as Jonah just said, I'm going to just be the a-hole here. Have you ever been, as being around these guys, is there a common denominator or how it takes to get over that idea that I want to be liked, to say, I don't care if I'm liked. I just want to be a good businessman. I want to this is good for my career.
Right. I think, of course, like you said, it is a natural human thing, to want to be liked. I think though that if you're going in it and looking at it from me being disliked will generate me more attention, more dollars, more pay-per-view buys, then who cares, you know? And even with people like Jalen Ramsey, I talk to Xavier about that all the time because he's a top, you know, we feel like he's a top corner. He's in a holdout right now. But he doesn't say anything, you know, like he just kind of keeps to himself. He doesn't really want to be that guy that stirs the pot. Even the holdout was very hard for him to, you know, bring himself to do. So I think it really also depends on.
And I think team sports are different because you can damage the locker room. If you go out too far on a limb, you can damage the locker room. Whereas if you're an individual sport, you're the only one who's risking yourself. You can play the part.
You know what? Well, I have a point. I mean, yeah, I agree with that, especially in football. However, I think there's a lot of athletes that aren't doing this intentionally, but have made themselves bigger stars through negative press. I'd say Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving are great basketball players, but I think they've become more famous and more in the conversation for some things they've done and said that people don't like. It just makes them bigger celebrities and bigger personalities, and now people root against them.
Right. That's more what I was saying is it really just depends on, you know, what you're comfortable with doing it and how you want to go out there and showcase yourself. Some guys like X, he doesn't really want to say it because I told him we had an opportunity to go on Skip and Shannon, and he's like, "Dude, that'd be really great. Like, you know, Skip and Shannon could be big, but I know they're going to ask me about the contract and I don't want to talk about it." Compared to you might ask, you know, somebody else like, you know, maybe Jalen Ramsey, and hey, you want to go on Skip and Shannon? Absolutely. They're going to bring up the contract.
Hell, he'll co-host it if you ask him.
Right. Let's go. You know, so I think it really just depends on, you know, personalities and stuff like that. But like you see KD, like it does, you know, genuinely bother him, you know, when people kind of go after him, and he is a great player. He's, you know, probably the best basketball player in the world right now. You know, so for you to see somebody like him, and even LeBron last year when they won the championship, and he said, you know, I want my damn respect too. You know, you can tell that, you know, those things do, regardless of, you know, if half the people on the earth think you're the best player of all time, you know, the other half think Michael Jordan is, you're naturally wanting to convince that other half, you know, that, you know, I do belong in that conversation. So I think, you know, as you said, it is something that's natural, but, you know, you're going to drive yourself crazy if you're trying to, you know, convince all the trolls otherwise in the world. So I think, you know, you might as well just embrace it. And, you know, if you can make some money while you're doing it, why not?
And be yourself and be authentic. That's why I've heard a lot of people saying they're not happy with what Cole Beasley said about the vaccine and the coronavirus. But I think in a way, it's made him that's definitely made him, I think, more authentic and more genuine and more of a human being. And in some ways, it might have made him more of a name and more marketable. We'll see where it goes. But I think more people know who Cole Beasley is and what he's about and what he stands for than they did before he started tweeting about vaccines.
Exactly. 1,000%.
And there are some ways to do it too. Since I said it, I can come up with a couple examples of guys who did thrive as a heel, even in a team sport. And I'm thinking, obviously, Dennis Rodman comes to mind. You know, Terrell Owens really embraced it. There are guys who do it, but they do sometimes pay a price for that also, because the team decides at some point, well, we got to move on from you, or we just don't have it within our big tent here to, you know, you're too disruptive. But there comes with a greater risk in a team sport. For sure. Oh, I just lost my microphone there. Hopefully we're all right. This is a professional operation here, Polo.
For sure.
Tell us, if you will, what this has been like since. All right, actually, let me stop. I'll ask it this way. So when Playmaker hires you to be the head of talent and partnerships, the NCAA ruling has not, you know, the Supreme Court has not spoken on this issue. Was there any anticipation by Playmaker that this was coming, or did you just get lucky here and then all of a sudden you have all these new places to go for work, where you have your plate just got a lot more full and you weren't anticipating it?
There was no anticipation. I think it was even the day before the first, where, I'm reaching out to, a few different kids that, we have relationships with, and really seeing kind of, what their thought process is and where they're standing on things. And they're like, well, our state doesn't really have any NIL. We don't know, if we're going to be able to do anything. This was the day before, it passed. So even from our standpoint, I think in the weeks leading up to it, we saw that there was, especially here in Texas, we knew that was going to be good. And then I think there were maybe 4 or 5 other states. And that's really where we were looking at those big schools in those areas, that were good, and who the top players on those teams were. And that's who, we figured that, we would really just go after those guys. And then once the first hit, it was like Pandora's box, because what happened was, now the kids that we had, had some brief discussions with, now we're able to talk to their parents. We're able to kind of run things through compliance. We're able to sign contracts, announce things. And what we really didn't account for was that, once we sign one kid and that kid announces their partnership with Playmaker, all of his teammates are going to be like, oh, what's this? Or what are you doing with them? And other players that he follows. So, now we're getting, literally thousands of emails from, people in the NCAA. And, then it became really difficult for us to continue to add the people that we were adding, because now every time somebody makes an announcement, there's an influx of emails and DMs and things like that. And then for us as well, we did our research on the guys we were going after. We don't know, most of these kids that are DMing us. There's there it could be a D3 rower, from Idaho that I don't know anything about that, as far as what I can really do to help you. So that's the other thing, is really for us to be able to, provide a service. I'm not signing 100 kids just to be able to brag and say, Playmaker has 100 kids under management for NIL. We want everybody to feel that they're getting the same amount of attention, same amount of service for us, no matter if they're, top of the line, bottom of the line. And it was like that even before. If you're an all-pro guy or a practice squad, bubble roster guy, we want you to at least feel like you're getting the same amount of attention. You're not going to get the same opportunities, but at least you're getting the same amount of attention, and we're doing everything we can, at least on our part, to, make you happy with what you're doing. And we want to do that same thing with a lot of these collegiate kids, where, if I am bringing you on, we want to be able to make sure, one, that we can, focus on branding partnerships that make sense for you and your brand, and, actually giving companies that you like. If you don't like McDonald's, I'm not going to ask you to, promote a new McChicken sandwich. It doesn't make sense. So, for us, it's just really trying to figure out every kid, and then making sure we can, generate money for them, come out with merchandise for them, and really figure out what's important. And now, because they are so young, it's a lot different than, just going to an Xavier Howard, kind of giving him our pitch, and then he says yes or no. We have layers that we have to go through with all these kids, where, you got to talk to the kid, you got to talk to mom, then, maybe dad is separate, then maybe the family lawyer, and then, the coaches at the school, compliance and things
Skill
like that.
trainer.
So, yeah. So exactly. So now, there's just so many more layers. And then we're getting to a point too, where, we had a kid that we were talking to, who's going into his freshman year, but he's going to be a quarterback, supposed to start. There's a lot of pressure. So he's at the point where it's like, okay, I know I want to make money, but I know I'm a freshman. I'm going to have to balance college and being, a starting quarterback at a big school. So what can I do to still do that, but not really, you guys give me things that are high lift, and, I can step back a little bit and focus. So the asks from a lot of these kids have been different. So it's really just trying to figure that out. And, like I said, just making sure we can service everybody, even with the, the kids that were going through all these emails and things. We've added a few kids like that have just reached out. That's how we got Kevin Marks. He reached out to us after an announcement that he saw. That wasn't somebody that I was targeting initially. But, I'm very glad that we have him. He's a top running back, in the country, especially outside the Power Five. So we're definitely excited about him. And that was something that, when you go into the research, you dig a little bit deeper. I know him from Buffalo, so to be able to, kind of go out there and get things done for him will be a little bit easier compared to, you know, somebody that might not have a big of a following, might not be as big of a school. And I don't know, you know, just companies in those areas. If I can't do too much for you, then, you know, we'll just let you know. And, you know, hopefully you can find some, you know, some representation elsewhere.
How do you gauge and what is the marketing potential for some of these college athletes, even high school athletes? Because as you mentioned, it's a broad spectrum of multiple sports,
Right.
multiple colleges, multiple leagues, multiple media markets, men, women, high school, college. Like, what's your pitch to the different athletes in all different situations?
Right. So I think the main thing for us first is to look at how good they are, you know, in their sport. I don't really care too much about the social media following because we can grow that. You know, we can really create content for you, create stories for you, really push you out there. You know, if there's, you know, just something unique about you that we can really tap into. There's a kid who's actually really good. He's a top 50 player in the country at UNC football. His name's Storm Duck. And I was like super excited for us to sign him just because his name is Storm Duck, you know? So just from the marketing opportunities and, you know, the things that we could really do to, you know, push him just from his name, you know,
Sounds like a Kentucky Derby horse.
Right, exactly. There's endless potential. So we have like some cool like Storm Duck merch that's coming out. It's like you know, the Chapel Hill building, and then there's lightning all over it, and then there's a puddle with rubber duckies floating in the puddle, and it says there, you know, there's a storm coming to Chapel Hill. But you know, even kind of things like that is just really trying to figure out ways to be creative. You know, so and we do that when we're looking at every single person that, you know, we're kind of talking to. Is the first thing we do is we send them a form that they can fill out, and they can tell us, you know, these are the kind of things I'm looking for. These are the kind of things I'm not looking for, you know, and really kind of learn their interests from there. And then that way we can almost curate it for each particular person. We've also been really focusing on like areas that we're familiar with. You know, so I'm in Houston, so I've been focusing on a lot of Texas schools. The company Playmaker is in Florida, and you know, a couple of the guys that are under the talent side are in, you know, North Carolina, things like that. So, you know, now we'll look at those Carolina area schools. We added the quarterback from Coastal Carolina, you know, which isn't too far. So a lot of it too comes down to, you know, what markets we have relationships in, and you know, how big the school is, how big the player is, and just going from that.
I'm curious about this aspect of it, Polo, because here we are recording this on July 9th. This is so new for everybody, for you, for the athletes themselves, for the schools, for their compliance, for their athletic department, for their marketing department, to make sure, let's say you have an athlete who wants to, we'll just do you know, the obvious one. You mentioned McDonald's. He's a big McDonald's guy. He wants to sign a thing with McDonald's, but the school's official sponsor is Burger King. You know, whatever. As you're going through these deals, what is popping up as a common snag, or that you find has been like frustrating in terms of communicating these deals or getting these deals done as everybody's trying to feel around in the dark, trying to interpret their version of the rule or the law, because they haven't been gone to court yet, or they haven't gone through a whole, you know, clean process. A lot of people are just guessing and hope it works out.
I think the frustrating thing is just the inconsistency from school to school. It's not like, you know, the NFL or the NBA that just has a union and everything is the same all across the board. And, you know, that it is what it is. So the compliance really comes down to what the school has set in place. And there's a lot of these companies that you're seeing. Open Doors is a great example that, you know, they're a company that specifically focuses on bridging athletes and brands together. And then they take a percentage of whatever the deal is. So let's say we'll go back to McDonald's. So let's say McDonald's is looking to promote a crispy chicken sandwich, and maybe it's in the North Carolina area. So now that will go to, you know, kids that are at Duke, that are at UNC, you know, and whatever other big schools are over there in that area. And then those kids can apply for that brand deal. And then McDonald's can go through and choose and let's say, okay, this is the kid that we want to work with. So there's a lot of those companies that have been popping up, but each school is using a different company. So some schools are actually using these companies like Open Doors as their compliance, where, okay, cool. We know that you guys are fine, so you guys can be our official compliance. There's another company called Influencer, which, some schools are using that. Some
UB's
schools
involved
might,
with them.
exactly. Some schools might have, just hired, a compliance officer that they're looking through it. Some schools might not have anything in place yet. So I think that's the most frustrating thing now is, as we're doing and really prepping and starting a lot of these deals for these kids is, we can go through the ringer with one kid and it's like, okay, cool. So now we know this next kid, once we lock that in, we'll have to do the same thing, but it could be a completely different process. And then the next kid could be a completely different process. Even the contracts that we've sent out, some schools have said, yeah, it's perfect. Go sign it. You're good. Some schools have said, nope, we got to change this. So then we change those things and then we have them sign it and then keep that one. And then it's like, no, we want to go back to, so it's really just the inconsistency, I think, for, the kids from each school is really the toughest part so far. So hopefully that gets straightened out. And then I think other than that, we should be fine because a lot of the rules are just the same rules as the NFL has, like, no gambling, no drinking, no CBD, no likenesses of the schools. And that's weird though too, Tim, is because some schools now are letting the kids use their likeness because they feel it's just free promotion for that university. So, again, it's just inconsistent.
I know the schools are figuring it out on the fly, especially because
Right.
this affects Division II, Division III, junior college, NAIA, anything collegiately, right. And not all of them have big staffs and big budgets to hire a company to do it for them. And I know, like the influencer basketball game I went to last night, there was red tape that different players had to go through in order to play in that game and not jeopardize their eligibility. And a lot of these players, athletes, coaches, schools don't really know what the rules are yet.
Right. 1,000%.
I think that it can become a recruiting tool also, if you're able to just say, and I think some schools have kind of done it, not enough for me to quote it, but I think I've seen it on social media, Polo, maybe one, where it's kind of been let known, come on over here and you can do whatever the hell you want, pretty much, and I don't, but in its bigger schools can do this, and well, any of them can do it really, but if you're UB and you say, yeah, you can, well, this actually helps UB, especially in a place, it's one of the few universities that's in a major metropolitan area in the Mid-American Conference. That could be the thing that gets you to choose, you know what, I don't want to go to Ball State, or I don't want to go to Bowling Green. I'm going to UB because it's in a city with businesses, and that's another thing that UB now has to watch, the local car dealer, which they always had to do anyway, right? The booster. But these deals, if they're on paper and they're filed, then it's all set. But anyways, there's all kinds of weirdness going on. What about high school kids? And I know you've mentioned it in our discussion here. The phrase has come up about high school. What's the philosophy? Because you can get them that early now. Of course, there's more risk. Especially, we've all seen the story of the high school phenom who never makes it to the pros. Imagine what Paul Harris's situation would have been, right?
Right.
And then he never made it. But
the
he
rules
would have
changed on Paul. Paul would have been in the NBA without going to college, but the year he graduated was the first year they had brought that age limit back.
Right. But there are, So I guess what are your thoughts on high school and approaching them that young?
I'll be honest. I've been approaching high school kids for years. So for me,
Jonathan Kuminga, right? One of your guys.
Who?
Where'd you work with? Or maybe still are Jonathan Kuminga, top 5 or 6 draft pick.
That's a perfect example. Like I've had a great relationship with JK, and he was in his junior year and reclassified. So I mean, as far as like what we can do, of course it's still limiting, but as far as like smaller brand deals and things like that, I've been giving them to high school kids just as long as they don't get paid to play basketball. Has always been my understanding, because there's no NCAA. Mm-hmm. So as long as they're not getting paid to play basketball, then you're not really ruining their NCAA eligibility. But as far as doing brand deals and things like that, great. My philosophy, Tim, is I never give kids like upfront guarantees, regardless of if it's NFL, NBA, high school. I feel like we're going to be able to do enough for you that you don't really need that. And I also think, really puts the kids in a bad position, because what you have is you have an agent that, let's take Jonah, for example, and let's say he's a first round, he's a first round lock, and Tim,
Right.
you're the agent, and you as a business owner can really just go to the bank, with maybe a 2% interest rate and take out $1 million as under Jonah's future earnings potential. And that's something that Jonah might not necessarily be able to do. But now you go to Jonah and you say, hey, you're going to sign with me. I'll give you $1 million up front, and use it how you want to. And then you just pay us back on that marketing back end, with a 10% interest. And so for you, now you're making an extra 8%, but that hurts Jonah really as a player, because especially if Jonah's that big where, you're going to give him that $1 million, you'll probably be able to call Nike the day after he signs and get him a multi-million-dollar deal. So now Jonah lost 8% of $1 million for, 1 day cash advance. So I think that's really what hurts a lot of the players is, people see that upfront money, especially on the marketing side, and they get really excited about it. And you're either going to have a company that doesn't do too well on the marketing, you're just in a hole for forever trying to work your way out of that, or you're just going to lose too much money too quickly for no reason, because you would have made it back that quick anyway. So on the high school side, I have no problem approaching them, because whether they're NBA talent, college talent, things like that, all the money that I'm bringing to them is money that they earn right now. So I think that regardless of if they make it or not, if they're only going to be a high school phenomenon and we can help them to capitalize off that, why not?
How do you think this will affect college sports as the product that we all see on TV and are fans of almost as a minor league? Because I see on one hand, there's basketball players coming out of the NBA draft and saying, if I can make a few dollars in college building my brand, I can wait on going professional. But on the other hand, you got the overtime league and guys going to play in the G League, skipping college altogether to make money. Will it help or hurt what we know of as college sports?
I actually think it'll help college sports, because you're starting to see like LaMelo Ball go to Australia. The NBL over there offers for those top kids $1 million. You have like overtime right now. They gave a kid $2 million this morning.
16-year-old.
Yeah, 16-year-old. They gave him $2 million. The G League is, I think, a $500,000 minimum for the G League select kids. So on the college side, you might not have a guaranteed payment, but at least you have some money that's coming in and is able to be generated. I just had a kid, Kendrick Davis from SMU, who withdrew from the draft and is going back to SMU. We signed him on the marketing, but it's just a little bit more of a comfortable feeling where at least I know now I might have been a bubble second round guy. Maybe I have to deal with a couple two-way contracts, G League contracts, and money that's not guaranteed, where I can just go back to college, have another year like I had this year, go in the first round and still make money while I'm in college this year. I think it just creates a little bit more, like you said, security and making kids want to stay. I think if it would have stayed the other way, then you would have had those overtimes, those G Leagues, the overseas and things just continue to take more and more players from college and, just continue to see that one and done kind of situation. So hopefully this will help it and make kids, just want to stay a few more years. And a lot of guys are bigger, in college than they were in the NBA. Mario Chalmers is a guy that we work with who won 2 championships with the Heat, but he won a national championship at Kansas. So we'll always get more marketing opportunities for him in Kansas than we will in Miami. And so, if you can take advantage of that and you're just a collegiate legend, maybe you want to stay.
I've always thought that the end game, or maybe not the full end game, but all right, this I think gets it a little closer to where I've always predicted it will, or at least should go. And I used to talk to Jerry Sullivan about this on his radio show, on my radio show. Jonah's heard me say this spiel before. I'm sure it comes up every year or so. I make a mention of it.
Right.
Sooner or later, a group of schools are going to get together and say, we're going pro. And they are just going to recruit kids and pay them to play football, not through scholarships. They're going to get cash, and they're going to say, what do we need the NCAA for anymore? Right. We're going to put any, and I can see it going one of two ways. With this Supreme Court ruling, I can see now the biggest schools doing this, Alabama, Kentucky basketball, whatever. Prior to this, I saw it as maybe the mid schools that always seem to get left out of a conference when there's a restructuring, when the different conferences start to morph and SMU gets left out or whatever. And then finally one of those schools saying, you know what, the hell with this. Let's just go, let's put our league. We're going to have our own TV deal. So what if we don't have a women's rowing team anymore? Because we're going to just leave the NCAA. We don't need to worry about compliance. We're just going to get paid, whatever, etc.
But I think I would say you're wrong. I would go the other side on that because of what's happening now, because no rules have changed yet that allow the schools to actually pay the athletes, and they don't want to pay the athletes. So what this NIL,
no, but I think
does,
this is eroding of the concept of amateurism. Like
maybe,
it's eroding. It is eroding to the point that the whole highfalutin idea of, amateur pristine, this fantasy that everybody has of thinking back to Jesse Owens at the 36 Olympics, that just doesn't exist anymore. The principle of sport for sport. And so I think
won't happen because the players now they can get all this money from Nike and other businesses. The NCAA and the colleges can continue to hoard all of the television money and the money they make off the NCAA.
But it's going to get lopsided.
They don't want to split it with anybody.
It's still going to get lopsided. You're still going to have some schools that can give you all of this.
But they can't. They legally can't now, and they don't want to give them.
No, I'm not talking
in their own pocket.
All right. So to get from where we are now to what I was saying, right, there's going to need to be some things are going to have to happen. Right. More dominoes are going to have to fall.
And those things I think won't fall. I think this becomes the replacement. This allows.
Well, what I'm saying
only
is
have the same economic rights that you and I and any other college student have.
But but the hierarchy of schools, you're still going to have schools that are left out because they don't have, there's two. All right. So Alabama can say, fine, we're done with all this other stuff. All right. I'm just using Alabama as an example. Number one football team, everybody knows it. Or Clemson, let's say Clemson, whatever. It gets to a point where they're tired of losing a recruit because they are the big powerhouse. And then fine. Well, all right. I've muddled. We have a guest here. What are your thoughts on let's bring you in on this, Polo. Cause I think Jonah raises a good point. I'm having a little trouble articulating the aspect of the erosion of it. I think the floodgates at some point, I think
I think a lot of people
don't care.
Think it's going to go in that direction. That's why I'm kind of pushing back on you, because I think that's a common perception, but I would say it's not going to play out that way.
Polo, your thoughts?
Jonah, I'm sorry. I agree with Tim.
Well, hey, you don't got to apologize to me.
Well, because I do feel like, and you're already starting to see this, is some schools just have more of an advantage. That kid from Oregon got millions or a six-figure deal from Nike for some NFTs. That's just, they're in Oregon. Like,
yeah, well,
that's just things that Oregon can offer that other schools can't. There was another school that gave everybody on the football team cars. Like, not every school can do that. So now, like Tim said, and it's not to say that it's going to happen, this year, next year, 10 years, it could happen 20 years from now. But really, if you're a team like a Clemson and you're just relying on the fact that, we win football games, we have Dabo Swinney, you're going to go to the national championship. Clemson's also in the middle of nowhere. So you might now have a Clemson starting to lose kids to USC because they're in Los Angeles. Like Tim said, even the same with Buffalo versus Bowling Green. So now you might have USC that just becomes this dominant football powerhouse again because they're in Los Angeles. They have a crazy amount of branding partnerships, crazy amount of things that you can do in that city. So now you might have it where all these kids are going to USC because, I know I can build a huge brand for myself. And now USC just becomes this dominant powerhouse and Clemson just falls and falls and falls over the years. And then to Tim's point, you separate yourself from the NCAA and you do it with a couple of other bigger schools and you create your own program where, now you're just like, a sub league or a farm league almost, to some of these bigger teams. So and I know that, that it's not something that's going to happen right away. And even to your point of this is almost in replace of that. I get that as well. But I also think that, it's really going to take years to kind of see how this all does pan out. Maybe the schools in the bigger cities start to overpower, some of the schools in the other areas. Cause that's been my recruiting pitch as well. Like there's a kid at Michigan that we're looking at, and my recruiting pitch for him is like, we have a really good relationship there with, a few local businesses. And I know that we can get you guys brand deals, and make money right away. So if that's me doing that, when it starts to come from, the universities and these bigger and bigger deals like Oregon is able to get with Nike, then I think over time, that almost gives them an unfair advantage. And it really just comes down to what schools have the best relationships with the biggest companies.
I think that's true. It depends how finely you cut it. Because, Oregon can have Nike just pay these players. I mean, they're probably doing that under the table already.
Oregon can literally go to Nike and say, hey, we need X amount of budget for, not just our football team, our basketball team, our women's rowing team for forever, and Nike has enough money to be able to do those things. And they can just say, you know what, we'll just give all these players deals and we won't give any other schools deals. And now you have an unfair advantage with Oregon and, their university and Nike. And now people already wanted to go to Oregon because the shoes that you get a new jersey every game, just from the look of that without getting paid. So now if you add
a new helmet every game, I mean, like the most expensive stuff, they don't care. They'll just burn money.
Because now once you graduate, now you just sell all that stuff. So now if you're able to sell that stuff while you're playing, get a new jersey every single game, new shoes, and then get a Nike deal and get paid by Nike, that's something where you'll start to see over the years, kids are going to sign in Oregon just because of that. So now when you start to get those schools, like I said, it's not going to be something that it'll happen next year, the year after, but 15, 20 years from now, can I see that happening? Absolutely.
Especially guys who are already playing for a Nike EYBL team and they're already in the Nike pipeline. But I do think that it's not anytime soon, I would predict, going to get to a point where the colleges or the conferences are paying salaries. Because I think that breaks the whole racket that the NCAA and these big conferences and big colleges have created. And that will, I think, put a lot of them out of business. I think this is the best thing that could have happened in a way for the colleges, because now they don't have to share any of the money they're bringing in from television deals, and they have to compete a little bit, but they don't have to share any of their money, and they get off the hook for not having to pay the players. They say, you go make your own money from these other companies, which any other student could have done in any other way. So it was really wrong that they ever didn't allow athletes to go get part-time jobs and make money their own way. But now that they're allowing that, they don't have to, they wash their hands of having to pay these employees for what they're providing for the university.
1,000%.
Polo, before we let you go, we've been going on a while here. I appreciate you giving us your time. This has been fascinating stuff. What about just a couple of specific areas? Because I think people have interest in these specific areas. It's one thing to see Kevin Marks doing a West Her Ford commercial, or whatever. But you also have these things now with the name, image, likeness of video games that used to be a thing. Obviously, it's where the whole case started with, I'm drawing a blank. Ed O'Bannon filed the suit. That's really was the first kind of domino on all this, because his image and likeness was being used in a video game. They had to discontinue all those video games. We could see those come back. Memorabilia is another thing too, because sports cards or even jersey sales, something that in the team shop.
NFTs.
Right. Where do you see, how do you see this evolution going with those aspects of marketing?
Right. I know on my side, I've been doing a lot of talking with Upper Deck, and kind of what we can and can't do. I think Upper Deck is already in a benefit because they don't have any NBA licensing, but they do make cards for NBA players just without the licensing on them. So they already have that clientele, and they have a lot of players on exclusive. They have LeBron James and Michael Jordan and Serena Williams, and huge players on exclusive deals still to this day with Upper Deck.
Tiger Woods, I think.
Tiger Woods. They have pretty much everybody. Yeah. Yeah. No.
Pretty much all of the iconic individuals. A lot of the they have a tendency to get those guys, and they don't, like you say. I think their only license that they have is with the NHL, which has to be such a small piece of the market.
NHL and like Marvel or something like that, So, but they still do produce these cards, just without the likenesses. So I think with them, at least, they're core customer base understands, okay, cool, we'll be able to get this guy's jersey or, this guy's card without the logos on it. And so in doing that, I think they're ahead of a lot of the curve with being able to create trading cards compared to, everybody knows about Panini for, the NBA and the NFL. I think if they got to a point where, now they're trying to sell cards with no logos on it, I don't know if it correlates the same because their customer base isn't really used to that. So, that's a discussion I've been having with Upper Deck a lot. I've definitely been doing everything on my side to kind of push more on the memorabilia side, the private autograph signings and things of that sort. And I think, again, you look at a team like Oregon, even with a player being able to sell, some of their stuff now while they're in school, there's a lot of schools that people go after that stuff for. Everybody wants stuff from UNC. Everybody wants stuff from Duke. Everybody wants stuff from Oregon. Now, if you're able to sell that, there's a lot of money that can go in your pocket, from that as well. So we'll definitely be taking full advantage of that.
Well, Polo, this has been enlightening. I've really enjoyed it. Is there, I don't want to cut off Jonah, though, if he had any more questions. Anything else we want to get into here that we missed out on?
Nothing real specific, no.
I think this is something that we'll probably need to revisit in a few months, because it's going to change. We're going to learn a lot about this probably pretty quickly. It's going to, we got a college football season that's about to start. You're going to be, you're already in it, I'm sure. Basketball, with everything as it starts rolling, it's a free for all right now.
It is.
I'm sorry, Jonah, you were saying?
Well, I got something. You got a minute, Paul? You got a couple minutes?
Yeah, I got all the time in the world.
All right, okay. So I want to ask you about something, and if you don't really want to talk about it, we cut it off. We won't even be part of it. But
okay.
I want to ask you, all right, so you're kind of a behind-the-scenes guy in this space a little bit, or sometimes. But I want to ask you, do you have any experience with viral fame on the internet at points in your life?
Viral fame?
Yeah.
As far as myself personally, or just with like influencers and things of that sort?
Yourself personally. Maybe you know where I'm going with this.
No, I don't.
All right. So if I look for you on Twitter, now you got a Twitter now, but when I used to look for you on Twitter for the show, all I find is these tweets from these thirsty girls that got this picture from you when you're like a teenager. They're like, I used to be in love with Polo Kerber, pinning them up on my wall. I was about to ask you what the heck, and I feel like that's why you weren't on Twitter for a while. Maybe you had to get away.
Right. I think it was when I was younger, there was this company, Karmaloot, it was called. It was like they sold clothes, and I used to model for them. So I think that's where like really like a lot of it came from. And I was younger. I was like,
how did we not know this?
You were like a teen heartthrob, I guess. I only seeing this after the fact, but
I was maybe like 18, 19. And, even now, like there are a lot of stories and stuff like that now that, kind of push a lot of that stuff down, farther in the Google searches, thankfully. When I was younger, man, it was ridiculous, but it is what it is.
That's what I thought. I almost thought you had to like kind of hide from that. Like
no, but the only thing that does upset me about it is because when I was younger like that, if you were able to almost like make a name and monetize yourself off of being a social media influencer, like you can nowadays, I would have been rich for years.
Ahead of your time, right?
Right, definitely ahead of my time. But it's not like there was, companies that just had, social media brand managers and things like that, and you could go to companies and work for companies and things like that. I think originally, like when I had first made like a Twitter and even like my first Instagram, I had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers, but I just like erased all that stuff just to kind of, push it down. And I didn't, for me, I was almost getting, like obsessed in social media, but without necessarily making anything of it, because at that time you couldn't really do anything. So it was, you're getting this attention and things like that, but for what? So it wasn't like I had that and I was making money off of it, and it would like consume me where I would literally spend more time. It's like Ready Player One, and it's like you're spending more time in like this virtual world that doesn't exist compared to your real life. So even now, like on my Instagram, like I only use it really more for like a work portfolio almost, when we're like talking to kids and trying to recruit new athletes. But as far as myself, other than that, I stay off social media. Even the Twitter, I just made it, and it has like 50 followers or something like that. But I just made that just because Playmaker wanted to be able to like have me tweet a couple things, and then we put in like graphics. But I stay off as much social media personally now as I can outside of Instagram.
It's funny because there's a subgenre. There's whatever happened years ago on Karmaloop, whatever that blew up,
Right.
and then you'll see 5, 6, 7 years later, there's girls or women posting. I'm embarrassed how obsessed I used to be with Polo Kerber, and like this was like my first crush years and years ago.
I had no idea, or else if I did have an idea, it clearly would have been part of the show a lot
It
earlier.
would have been part of your
the,
Buffalo news story.
or years ago. Yeah, I mean, this wouldn't just be. All right. Polo Kerber,
Yes, sir.
head of talent and partnerships for Playmaker. This has been a lot of fun. Number one, longtime friend of the show. It's great to have you back on. But this was one of those interviews where I don't know the answers as I'm asking the question. Now, like we had Dwight Gooden on earlier this week, and I know so much about Dwight Gooden that I kind of, I'm drawing things out of him for the audience's sake.
Right.
With this, I'm asking a question and I have no idea what you're going to say, which is because that's where we are right now with this frontier, as I keep calling it. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would definitely love to sit back down with you guys maybe a few weeks after the college season started. I know that's probably when we'll push out most of our brand deals and really start to, see exactly, what it's like and what a kid can do with their name, image, and likeness. Can they balance being able to profit off the field while, managing their football schedule and their school schedule? I think there's a lot, that we won't have the answers to right now. We might not have the answers to when we get back on the on another podcast, but maybe we'll have some more clarity and at least kind of see, how it's going, and I can share, my experience of if I think, it was for the best of the kids. I think Jonah, when we're looking at some of those other things like going to the NBL, going to the overtime league and things like that, those kids don't have to do school right away. So you can always look back at it. So I know this is a lot, especially, just thinking back on my life being, 16, 17 years old and, barely even managing high school and high school football and high school classes enough. So to send a kid to college and have, the weight of the world on them and the pressure of, national televised games every single week, and ask them to do brand partnerships and, sell merchandise and appearances and sign autographs. I'm sure it'll be a lot for a lot of kids. So I'm definitely excited to, just get back on the phone with you guys and kind of see where we're at.
And not to drag this close out, but just it pops into my head as we're talking about what we don't know. This ruling is so fresh. We really haven't heard from the influence makers from the authority set. We haven't really heard Nick Saban talk, give us his take on this in a philosophical way, or Dabo Sweeney, or, it's Rick Pitino or whoever. Who?
Mike Krzyzewski, coach.
Yeah, right. We haven't heard from these guys yet, and they will. It's going to be an ebb and a flow in terms of public perception on this when they hear from the people that they love and trust. When Jim Boeheim goes on a 10-minute rant on it, during the preseason or whatever. Yeah, the news cycle on this is going to change. It's going to be worth watching.
Again, not to drag the close on too much, but I think another thing that we'll see as the college season on both sides start is, we're really starting this in July, which is the beginning of a new business quarter, but it wasn't something that anybody was planned for. So now you have these companies that their budgets are already allotted for the next 3 months. So now by the time the collegiate season started, you'll have a lot of these businesses that have had time to understand the NIL, plan for it, and really set a budget aside. So I think, in 3 months from now, when the college season starts, you'll see an influx of this. And that's when we'll really be able to see, how people can manage it and the full potential of what's going to happen.
And coming out of a pandemic season that changed a lot of dynamics in all levels of sports, but colleges with the transfer portals and different ways they couldn't make money in the past year. I think a lot of things, there's a big reset going on in college athletics in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, welcome to the Tim Graham Show, where the closing is a whole new podcast.
Tease the next one.
Right.
An hour and 15 minutes we were at it. We didn't have this much to talk about with Dwight Gooden. I mean, the guy's a borderline Hall of Famer. He's had a hell of a life, and for good and bad. And yet we found more to talk about with Polo Kerber, and we have to cut it off.
I'll take it.
Polo,
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
doing this.
Thanks, Tim.
All righty. CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one-team approach can do for you.